Waheguru, Waheguru, Waheguru. 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 Waheguru, Waheguru, Waheguru.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you very much for joining us for Understanding Sikhism. We would like to begin with our host and moderator, Marianne Kaufman.
Hello, everyone. Welcome, of course, to the amazing faith initiative of the Interfaith Alliance of Oklahoma, whose purpose is to promote understanding and friendship among communities of different faiths and beliefs. We are excited and thankful to all of you for being here with us tonight. I am Marianne Kaufman, the moderator, and I would like to introduce to you Andy and Rabbi Abby Jacobson, who are both the hosts of tonight's event. Thank you, Andy and Rabbi Abby. And of course, we're delighted to have Sarab Singh, who will present on the Sikh way of life. Thank you, Sarab. This is a 1-hour session. The PowerPoint presentation will be 40 minutes. And after the presentation, there will be 15 minutes for questions and answers. You will all remain muted through the entire session. Because of the large number of participants, which is a wonderful thing, we're using both Zoom and Facebook. And since we're just learning how to interface it, please forgive any glitches for tonight. Unfortunately, we will only be able to answer questions using the Zoom chat. And we will talk a little bit more towards the end of the session of how you can ask questions maybe tomorrow through the Interfaith website. So what we're asking you tonight is to write your questions using chat and not raising your hands. We will do our best to answer them all, so please remain muted during the session. As you may have just read, I would like to share a little bit with you about Sarab. Sarab was born in India to Sikh parents. He has volunteered in the Sikh Gurdwara of Tampa, Florida for 11 years and continued his journey in youth camps teaching the Sikh way of life for over 15 years. Sarab has lived in Oklahoma City for 14 years, and he is part of the board of the Interfaith Alliance since 2019. He continues to organize learning groups and speak at university classes in Sikhism. He has over 20 years of global executive experience in sectors of energy, automotive, industrial manufacturing, and distribution. Sarab and Mandeep have been married for 33 years and have 2 adult children. Again, we are delighted and excited to have Sarab among us to present on the Sikh way of life. I will now hand the mic to Sarab.
Thank you, Marianne. I want to share my screen with you, and as I'm sharing and doing that, I'll continue talking. So hopefully all of you are able to hear me well and are able to see the screen as I would share the slides during the course of my communication with you. First of all, I would like to take this opportunity to thank Interfaith Alliance of Oklahoma and the Amazing Faiths program, both their past leadership and current leadership, who have worked very, very diligently and very hard in trying to make this learning experience or sharing of Sikh faith possible. This is a program that is an amazing program that you can learn about many faiths that are part of the Interfaith Alliance. And I just feel honored and privileged that they considered me and shared this opportunity with me, and to represent the Sikh faith or Sikh way of life. And sharing about any faith or any way of life can be a complex matter. It is not easy. There is a lot packed into that, but we will do our best, to spend the next 40-45 minutes in a positive, productive way. But to err as human, I would very much in advance ask for your forgiveness for any errors that I will probably make during this presentation, and for any omissions or things that may not jive with what people may believe in. I would also like to thank the viewers, who took their time and showed interest about learning about Sikh faith and Sikh way of life. It is really appreciated, and I want to express my heartfelt gratitude to the organizers and the people who are listening and viewing this program. I have a lot packed into this next 40 minutes, so at times I may be a little fast, but the intention is very sincere. So let's get started. The first question that's always asked, how do you pronounce the word Sikh? And so this slide tells you that it almost sounds like when a person is sick, and so Sikh is the right pronunciation. And we may come in various forms. So here's, picking on my family. Here's a picture from my family. You can see that within the family, there's a lot of diversity. They all don't look alike. There are different, from a newborn child on the right-hand side of my screen to a 94-year-old dad, at the bottom of the screen. And then there are high school people. You can see, the gentleman in the white, small, different turban. He's in high school. And then you can see that some ladies are wearing a head covering, some ladies are not. So there is a lot of diversity. And that may just be the external diversity. The bottom line is that within the Sikh faith, within the Sikh way of living, there is a lot of diversity, just like the diversity in the divine creation, just like what the Interfaith Alliance represents. There is the entire creation of divine is diverse. So we are a very small microcosm of what the world, the universe represents. What does the word Sikh mean? The literal meaning sometimes means student, but a Sikh is a seeker, a learner, a disciple, a pathfinder, a researcher, a pilgrim, an explorer. All these mean the Sikh. But really, in reality, Sikh is our mind. It is the internal side of us. So the reason is because internal thought process is what governs who we are. It shapes our current state. It shapes our future state, the infinite potential that it offers in improving our quality. As one shall sow, so shall one reap. And so the mind is what governs a lot of how we live. The connection between Sikh faith and way of life. There is one universal, eternal divine, the only permanent truth. So Sikh is very much monotheistic. Sikh faith is based upon total focus of the mind and thought, word, and action on the divine word. Divine word is called Shabad. Practice of the Shabad with total focus is the Sikh way of life. Sikh way of life is personal and internal. 100% focus on one divine to improve towards a state of zero ego and doubt is what is advocated in the Sikh way of life. A journey of continuous improvement, enabling the transformation of the mind. Therefore, the total focus on the message of the divine word is essential, necessary. The founder of Sikh faith was Nanak, and you can see the word, how we say it in the Sikh way of life, and also how it is pronounced. He was born in 1469, which makes also the founding year of Sikh way of life. He was born in Nankana Sahib, currently in Pakistan, after the region or the area got divided in 1947 between India and Pakistan into two countries. It kind of gives you in that rectangle a little bit of idea how far it is from New Delhi, which a lot of people are familiar with as the capital of India. Nanak was an explorer. He obviously had a number of qualities, but he traveled far and wide for 25 years in 4 directions. And all these journeys, he was not only learning, but also sharing, pretty much what we are doing today. He was a seeker and devotee of divine. He understood the divine system. He experienced the divine through both emotional and intellectual process, or love and logic. Spiritually enlightened through this process. If you have to use today's words, he was a critical thinker, musician, explorer, a great sense of humor, very simple, but totally full of divine virtues. He shared the path of enlightenment with the humanity out of compassion by recording the divine word called Shabad, now in Granth Sahib, that we call our holy scripture. People during his lifetime were calling him Guru or the enlightener. According to Nanak himself, Shabad is the Guru that can enlighten a human mind. That's why mind is the Sikh. The literal meaning of Guru is teacher, just like the literal meaning of Sikh was the student. But Guru is an educator, mentor, guide, map, path, enlightener. And literally, it can be split into 2 parts: Gu, the first 2 letters, or darkness, or ignorance. And then Ru, light, or enlightenment. So that was make the Guru. Or Guru helps to dispel the darkness of our mind and enlighten it spiritually. It's a personal relationship between a Sikh and a Guru. There can be no Sikh without a Guru. Shabad is the Guru. Divine word is the Guru. And human mind is the Sikh. There are compositions, contributions by the first 10 devotees who were able to take care of the divine word in compilation and recording from 1469, and then caretaking it and passing it on till 1708. So the divine word, Guru Granth Sahib, was compiled in 1604. It became the final and permanent guide of the Sikh way of life in 1708. It has 1,429 pages of divine word. It has several languages because Nanak traveled in 4 directions for 25 years, and a language or a dialect would change every 50 kilometers or miles. And so, he would be able to recite compositions or the divine word in that language. And so there are many languages in Granth Sahib, but the script is one which is Gurmukhi. It's called Gurmukhi script. There are 6,000 plus hymns in poetic form structured by rag. There are 31 classical music measures and melodies or rag in Granth Sahib. And there are 35 devotees of divine from extremely diverse backgrounds who have contributed to Granth Sahib. So Granth Sahib advocates 2 types of living very consistently throughout the 1,429 pages. It says you can be a Shabad-driven or divine word-driven person, or ego-driven. It inspires the mind to become Shabad-driven. The divine word in Granth Sahib has a universal and timeless message. No person or group has monopoly or ownership of the Shabad or its message. It's available for all humanity to benefit from it. And that some of the translations and Granth Sahib is available on the internet these days, which makes it easier. The divine music, the rag, kirtan. Rag is a melodic framework for improvisation in Indian classical music with an emotional significance, such as with season, time, mood, to color the mind with a deep and sometimes an abstract message with ease. Shabad sung in rag is called kirtan, which you will find happening in most of the gurdwaras when we walk in. Continuous association with kirtan can be transformative for the mind. Granth Sahib starts with a number 1. You can see this. The first one is in the Gurmukhi script, then it is in the normal Roman script, and what it really means is one divine in all. And that's how Granth Sahib starts. But then sharing the first few words in Granth Sahib. First is Ik Oankar, which you may have all seen on my slides or at the beginning of this program, in the introduction. It means one universal, continuous, limitless divine. And so again, that is the foundation of Sikh way of life. Satnam, that message, divine word is true and permanent. From the time this creation began, and will always be true. Divine creator is the creator of all creations. It is the treasure of virtues personified, which means even though divine may seem abstract, but the divine is personified throughout all its creation. So it's total love, which means there is zero fear and zero hate. It's timeless, beyond birth and death, self-created existence, pure energy, but understood by the grace of Guru, Shabad, or the divine word. So here is Granth Sahib picture, and let us say this is the representation of mind. The relationship between the mind and the Shabad, or the Sikh and the Guru, is a relationship of love. Nanak says, my mind is pierced through by the arrow of divine love. Divine knows my anguish, my pain, deep inside me, to love within my mind. It gives a couple of analogies. A common analogy in Granth Sahib is the relationship between the lotus and water. A lotus cannot exist or survive without water, but the water under it can be pretty murky, can be pretty dirty. Yet the lotus has the quality to stay above that water and keep itself very beautiful and clean. And which is the kind of a message to the mind that no matter what state you are trying to exist in, it could be a very positive or it could be a very negative, tumultuous time, try to stay above that. Or it can define like the creatures in water. The relationship between these creatures in water deep inside it is very inseparable. There's a relationship of love. So it's trying to again instruct the mind that your relationship with the divine, make it inseparable so you're constantly in connection with the divine. It's about total surrender. Mind, let go of ego and pride to merge with the divine you love so deeply. Nanak says it is worthless to live in this world if the love for one divine is missing. Love is continuous. It's continuous longing for something that you treasure so much, which in this case is divine or the virtues. This true love is selfless, limitless, unconditional. There is zero expectation when you are trying to be in connection with the divine. Analogies that are used in Granth Sahib are between mother and child. Mother just loves the children that she has, feeds them, dresses them, all the taking care of the children. And that relationship is so universal. Same thing between two spouses, longing for each other. These are examples used to try to describe the relationship of our mind with our divine that we need to develop. Love is a powerful force. When you are in love, you always want to be together. When you're not together, you're always longing to be together. You cherish the company of each other and support each other. When not together, you feel something is missing, that your life is incomplete. So the power of love is great. Another example that's used is between calf and cow, many times. All other love besides the divine love is emotional attachment. It shall pass away. It is false. It is transitory. Devotee Nanak's mind feels contentment through the love of the Shabad. Now, we have already said that divine is the creator, but where the mind has the challenges to forming this loving relationship with the divine, but the natural inclination is towards that we fall in love with the creation. The bottom line is that everything is divine, but our mind, through the education from the Shabad or the word, has to be able to separate that loving attachment to the divine versus the creation. Nanak says the entire universe is the form of one. Rare are blessed with such spiritual wisdom. Wherever I go, I see one. One divine manifests in many forms, while still formless and absolute. Divine is the water and the waves in it. Nanak's one divine is always detached and liberated. And so when we have to become divine-like, which we are trying to, which is the journey, then we must also focus on the end goal of detachment and liberation. All is one divine. There is no two or second. But Granth Sahib refers to explaining this many times, one and two. So another example that is used in the rainbow. Now, rainbow is not tangible. You can't really hold on to it, except for the beauty through our eyes. And still, the waves in the water, the drop of water, the bubbles, and the rainbow phenomena is all form of water. It also shares with us the diversity. If we can behold that beauty of different colors that we see in the rainbow, that light and water combination. It is also sharing with us how the creation is so diverse. It's just like those colors, but so beautiful. And if you go behind the scenes, that rainbow is a circle. It's not just a bow. So these are examples, again, trying to enlighten our mind to understand when you live in this world, how do you see one divine as you live in this world and connect with the oneness of that divine while not getting connected with just the creation parts. And we'll come to a little bit more on that. Nanak focuses a lot on continuous remembrance. We call it ardas, and says, praise all the time. May I never forget you, divine, the perfect treasure of virtues. These are the divine virtues. Again, it's a busy slide, but I just wanted to share with you that the Granth Sahib or the Shabad points out to the countless virtues that the divine has, that our mind must try to assimilate or imbibe as many as we can. Love, listening, humility, prayer, empathy, compassion, divine will, gratitude, character, equipoise, contentment, and so on. There are 4 levels of existence: physical, emotional, intellectual, spiritual. Our mind can fluctuate between the first 3 very easily. And if you look at the entire creation, it will fall somewhere there. We obviously see a lot of physical things, and the desk I'm sitting at or the chair I'm sitting on is a very physical thing. It may not have any emotion. But then in the creation, we find many species that may have the emotional level. We may find certain species, definitely the human, that has intellectual capability. But it is very rare to really reach the level of spirituality. And that's where we as human beings become very, very fortunate and lucky that divine has given us or blessed us with this capability to transcend these 3 levels and become spiritual. The problem is to become spiritual, there is a roadblock, and the roadblock is within our mind, and that is ego. And the branches of ego, the desires, the expectations, anger, greed, attachment, pride, misinformation, rituals, lies, hate, jealousy, and so on and on. Let's sum them up and call them vices. So the challenge for us is to overcome those vices. So, we have 3 levels of existence where we can actually go back and forth based upon, how we are programming our mind, what is influencing our mind, how we are learning. But the challenge that Nanak gives us through the Sikh way of life is the fourth level. Try to go beyond these, the spiritual level, so you can be one with divine. There are three numbers that are referred in Granth Sahib quite a bit: 0, 1, and 2. So the 2 is always almost referred to as the creation. And 0 is the ego. I mean, that is the direction we must take our mind to make that ego 0, to become one with divine. And so the challenge is to go and look beyond the three levels: physical, emotional, intellectual. Try to sublimate the ego to merge with the divine, become one with divine, one with divine. See, language has its limitations. Toni Morrison says, we die. That may be the meaning of life. She said this in 1993 in the lecture for her Nobel Prize in literature. But she says, we do language. That may be the measure of our lives. Further on, she says that mortality and language appear as the great forces of human existence. We have to communicate, we have to share, we have to learn. But as profound as a respect for language was, that respect was predicated on an understanding of its limits. Language fails. Language gestures towards that which it cannot embody. And that's where the hard part comes in when we are trying to interpret and understand the divine word, the Shabad, that it provides us, it guides us, it points towards the message of the divine so we can incorporate in our mind. It's a very simple question Nanak asks. In Gurumukhi, it says, Kin bid sagar tariye. How do I cross this ocean of life? The life is described as the ocean, and sometimes a stormy one. And how do we cross this? How do we live this? And you ask children, you ask young adults, you ask adults, you ask people in older ages. Everybody has their issues. And Nanak observed that as he traveled he saw that people were not happy at times. And this was a common question. How do I navigate through this thing that's called life? He gives a very simple answer. Focus the mind on the Shabad, on the divine message, and try to incorporate the values and virtues in you. And gives this example of duck. Duck has this unique quality that Nanak observed. It lives in water, loves the water, but its feathers don't get wet with water, which means from a divine message perspective, we have to live in this world. We have to fulfill our responsibilities. We have to do our daily duties. We must, apply those values and virtues in growing up and surviving and sustaining. But we must stay above the morass, the murkiness, the tumultuousness, above the vices, and not let the mind be affected or influenced by the negative. Some aspects of the organized religion when it comes to Sikh way of life. Here is a Sikh Gurdwara picture with the emblem on the front, Ek Onkar. Due to sanctity, hygiene, respect, when we enter the Gurdwara, we cover our heads. No footwear is allowed, wash our hands, and then we kneel and bow in front of the Granth Sahib. Generally, there is Granth Sahib, there is a discourse going on, or there is a kirtan going on. And you sit down generally on the floor, but due to health reasons, you may have to sit on the chair. And you listen to that. And that at the end of the program, there is generally what is called ardas, a congregational prayer, and suitable to a general congregation or to the occasion, if there is a birth or a death or a marriage. And after the ardas, there is a distribution of kada prasad. It's a sweet pudding. And then finally, the entire congregation eats langar, which is called a community kitchen or a community food. Everybody breaks bread together and shares the meal. And that's kind of the end of the program. That's a typical in almost all Gurdwaras, consistent almost in the entire world, wherever the Sikhs have a Gurdwara, worldwide. I was asked to cover some misconceptions or misunderstandings that affect the Sikh way of life. One common one is judgments based upon appearance. It's a very natural one. Mistaken identity, soft target, lumped with other faiths, equality of genders. A lot of people have asked me, in your faith, gender equality does not exist. That's not so true, because at least from my childhood till now, what we have learned and practiced is that there is no bar when it comes to genders or age. All the things that can be considered a Sikh way of life in attaching our mind to the divine word, to Granth Sahib, all those or any practices in the organized religion in the Gurdwara can be performed irrespective of either age or gender or race or class or color or anything. So there is no such thing. Most boys with uncut hair at schools looked at as girls. A lot of times, Sikhs may be perceived weak, but at a lot of times the reputation, or they can be labeled as, oh, you're militant. Oh, we remember you were the guards of the queen, or you were the ones in the army who were majority involved in the wars. Not so true. Not so. Lack of consistency in one voice or message, from the entire Sikh faith. Association with practices that may be unsupported by the message of the Shabad, message of the divine word. We may have just acquired those practices, but without giving a lot of thought to it. In summary, the Sikh way of life, it's one divine, monotheistic. Mind is the Sikh. Focus the mind on the divine message, the relationship of love between the Shabad, Guru, and your mind. Understanding the message, 6,000 plus hymns in Granth Sahib. So it can take a lifetime to incorporate that, but it can take only maybe a few years if one is in continuous communication and understanding mode of the message. The objective is spiritual enlightenment, liberation from birth and death, merger of the soul, the divine light that exists in entire human creation with the divine. Human form is a vessel, a rare gift, divine gift, a blessed opportunity to achieve this merger with the divine. The path is challenging and not without roadblocks. It requires hard work to put that message into practice, to attain that state of zero ego. Virtues like love, compassion, detachment, forgiveness, kindness, and as we discussed this a little earlier, continuous incorporation of those virtues in your life, in your mind, in your thought, in your actions, and in your words is the key. Constant practice, continuously being in a mode of prayer, and always staying connected with the divine, asking for the union and grace. In conclusion, the Sikh way of life, any thought, any action, any activity that enables our mind to always be connected to the eternal true message of divine is positive, because it is value added and takes you or moves you, inches you towards that goal of union with the divine. All other actions may be either neutral or maybe negative. Like I said about if you are over influenced with the vices or practices that may actually take you backwards. So the challenge is managing the mind towards the positive, to improve the quality of mind, to transform that mind and transform it to the level that it is spiritually enlightened and ultimately achieves the merger with the divine. I want to take this time again to thank the Interfaith Alliance of Oklahoma, Amazing Faiths Program, their board members, their leadership, and all the members who have worked very hard to make this event possible. And my heartfelt gratitude to all of them. It takes a lot. And Marianne. And then this program would not be possible without all of you who have taken an hour out of your precious time, daily routine. When everybody's on Zoom these days, and it's not easy to really create that interest even to sign on, to learn about it. And learning and sharing is all what is the Sikh way of life and the Amazing Faiths. So I'll turn it back to Marianne. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Saurabh, for your wonderful presentation. In fact, I have so many questions, and I'm hoping we'll get quite a few from the audience. Just a reminder, at least those who are on Zoom, to please use your chat function to ask questions. I will start with one, Saurabh.
Yeah.
Let me see if there's any here. How large is the Sikh community in this country and also worldwide? Obviously, it started in the Pakistan-India region, and even in Oklahoma.
Yeah, I would worldwide 25 million. It's considered to be the 5th largest religion, faith worldwide.
Wow.
In North America, I would say it's roughly between 1 and 2 million. If you have to really nail it down, maybe 1.5 million. Concentrated in certain sections, big cities, you know. In Oklahoma, I would say that we have about 250.
Wonderful, thank you. We have a couple of questions. The first is, you said that the Sikh is to understand the divine system. Please say more.
We live in the divine, and divine lives within us. That's how the relationship is between the divine and divine's creation. And the natural tendency of us as human beings is that mind tends to gravitate towards something that is tangible. And so, but divine is abstract because divine is everywhere. And so for us to learn and understand and train our mind to see beyond just the tangible, it becomes the challenge. How do you grow yourself spiritually and look beyond what you are just hearing or listening? It is a process of spiritual growth. And it starts with, obviously, the emotional and the intellectual side, combining it too. Because, you know, a lot of the soft virtues that, for example, that we said, loving has no limit. You can love your child, but that may be just your child. But now talk about loving your neighbor. Now talk about loving your community and other communities. Now talk about loving the entire United States, North America, and the entire world. You know, when there are certain people who go and help Africa, whereas the other people may question, why are you doing that? So they are obviously thinking something different than the ones who are stopping them. So the love transcends beyond borders, beyond our color, beyond our shape and size, beyond what we can think. So the thinking level is unlimited. The potential is as far, wide, deep, and large as the divine itself. And the divine is not limited to this world, the earth that we live in. Divine is not even limited to the galaxy that we live in. There are multiple galaxies that we don't even know of yet. So the idea is, think about that big
Mhm.
Entire universe is divine. And now when you compare yourself to that entire universe, your level of existence is very minuscule.
My
Now
heart the phantom.
that's what it is, right?
How beautiful. The next question is, what is the meaning of the name Sing? I see it quite often.
So when the divine word Nanak started in 1469 and started getting recorded, and the custodians passed it on from each other, from one to the other, in 1708, or just a few years before that, 1699, it was time to kind of give a little structure to the faith. And at that time, because equality was a very fundamental foundation of Sikh way of life, everybody's equal. And there was in those times in the society, people were judged by just their name. Even today, actually, even today in India, when you go, last name can be used as a way to judge people, because the entire society there was divided into 4 castes, particularly on the Hindu faith side. There were 4 castes, and sometimes the one caste was not even speaking with the other caste. They had their own practices, their own foods, and their own separations. And whereas they're all people, they're only humans. But so the 10th Guru, or the 10th Nanak, Guru Gobind Singh, he said that to create more equality, I would create last name of all men as Singhs and all female as Kaurs. So there'll be only 2 last names. And so the literal meaning of Singh is lion, tiger, courageous person. And the literal meaning of Kaur is princess. And the idea was to create such a society where there is zero hate, that you don't just try to judge or hate people just based upon their looks or last names or any such thing. How can we have a much more equal society?
A quick follow-up question. So in marriage,
Mhm.
what names does the spouses take? Do they keep their names, or?
Well, the preference is, from a way of life standpoint, Singh and Kaur. All males use the name Singh, all females Kaur. But in 60s, 70s, 80s, when people were immigrating to the United States, I think at that time there was something about that you had to take your husband's last name,
Yes.
like that. So like my wife, her name is Mandeep Kaur, and that's where it would stop. But when we got married on the license, they had to say you have to put Singh. So Mandeep Kaur Singh. So I'm just trying to say.
Makes sense. We have another question. You spoke of the divine light within us. Is this somewhat like what Christians call the soul?
Correct. That's right. That's exactly what we mean.
Okay. A follow-up question, or another question. As a musician, are the 600 hymns written or learned by rote?
I don't think so. There are 6,000 hymns. In fact, the Granth Sahib is broken down into almost what I may call 32 chapters. And the start of each chapter is a rag, a musical composition melody. And you can improvise it or create variations of it. But singing those 6,000 hymns divided into those chapters has a unique experience. You may not even need an instrument, actually. You just vocally, if you sing it, it can have an impact on your mind. If you know the language, it can have actually the impact can be even quadrupling in my mind. But just not even if you don't know it. Like when I was 18 or 19 years old, I did not know the meaning of all the words in the Granth Sahib, yet I would listen to that and it would still your mind. And a lot of the game of trying to learn and understand is how can you bring some stillness in your mind, because the mind in the world that we live in is constantly being fed these desires or these conflicts or these vices that creates some kind of a vortex or tumultuous state, or a state of expectations and desires. And you have to find a way to still that. And music is a great enabler I'm not saying just the Sikh music. It can be any music. It's a great enabler to still that mind. I mean, we saw yesterday in Biden's inauguration, Amanda Gorman, when she was doing that poem, in my opinion, there were a lot of positive stillness to the mind. People were paying a lot more attention than to the speech, just because it had some poetic to it. And then if you knew the words, which you could relate to, it helps more.
The language of beauty. Another question. The list of misconceptions. One is soft target. What do you mean by that?
Well, if you remember a few years back, there was an issue in Wisconsin. I think there's a Gurdwara in Wisconsin, and I think there was a shooting incident there. The person who went out and started indiscriminately shooting at that place of worship, in his mind, did not know who Sikhs are. It was really trying to lump them with someone who is immigrant from a different country, a different faith, does not belong here. And my father-in-law came here in 70s. A lot of people from Sikh faith came here in 60s and 70s. There was an Iran crisis here in 70s, and a lot of people very immediately started calling Sikhs Ayatollah, and even in 9/11, there were a couple of mishaps. And so, it become a very soft target because it is very easy to lump you or take you for something that you are not. And this is not just true for this country, by the way. It is true worldwide. So I'm giving examples from United States only because it is something that is close to our heart and we can relate to it. But worldwide, these examples exist.
So follow-up question to that, your head coverings, you seem to wear them all the time during your worship and also outside in the community. Is that totally for reasons of hygiene, like you mentioned?
We keep uncut hair, long hair.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the head covering comes to protect the long hair.
Okay.
And right from Nanak to my great-grandfather, grandfather, my father, they all have worn this turban that I'm wearing. So it kind of becomes it's a second thought. I mean, you just don't even think about it, right?
Sure.
But in reality, it protects the hair. I had long hair, and I showed you the picture of a high school student who had a bun of hair on top, covered by what we call a small turban, patka.
Uh-huh.
And the turban comes in different shapes and styles and colors and styles don't mean anything. But from my basic understanding is that these are all visual management areas of connecting with the divine. And every person who is in the Sikh faith, and that's where I come from, diversity, right?
Mm-hmm.
Every person has their own personal connection with the divine word, with the understanding of the divine word and the divine, and adopting and practicing these visual management techniques that make them feel comfortable in that relationship. So I'll give you, we already said through my presentation that the challenge for us is to manage the mind, because mind can go into 100 different directions. As human beings, one thing that is common to all of us is that we all have been blessed with what is called hair.
Mm-hmm.
I have it.
Some more than others, but yes.
And that managing hair sometimes can be a full-time job. Mm-hmm. Some cut it, some don't cut it, some spray it, some wash it, some color it. It's a very visual way of understanding that how you manage your mind can be learned by sometimes managing your hair, because it almost becomes part of your personality, doesn't it?
Oh, yes. It does to all of us. So there are a couple of more questions here. Are there special holy days?
the birthdays of the contributors to the Granth Sahib, certain special days when, they may have promulgated something or announced something, they may become the days of celebration. In generally, when I was growing up in India, there were two national holidays, which was the birth anniversary of Guru Nanak, and the 10th Guru, 1708, Guru Gobind. So my point is that, but if you read the divine word, all days are equal. Every day, every hour, every minute, every second is precious and pious and divine, as long as we can connect our mind to the divine message. So the divine word advocates very strongly that you cannot say that one day is sacred over other, but you can celebrate them.
Great answer. Back to the hair again. What is the meaning of having long hair?
There are many theories behind this.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't have a perfect answer or a good answer. I think it is again, in my opinion, the answer that I've already given, that having a long hair, managing that hair, makes you question a lot of things and becomes a source of that questioning will take you to the source of those virtues that you need to bring in yourself to practice that will help you go through this life. It takes a lot of patience to manage here, by the way.
Yes, it does. I would agree. We have another question. What are the 5 Ks of Sikhism? What is the historical origin of that?
The 5 Ks that I understand go back to 1699, when at that time, there was a lot of persecution of not only the people of Hindu faith, but also other religions. There was a ruler in India at that time. His name was Aurangzeb. Aurangzeb wanted the entire country to look like one faith, which was the Islam, Muslim. And so he had taken on this agenda of, elimination of other faiths, which is not new to the history of the world. Okay. And in that process, the Sikh leader at that time, the 9th devotee, Nanak Tegh Bahadur, was assassinated in public to create this fear. And his son, Gobind Singh, the 10th Guru, when Aurangzeb was challenging people to come forward who believe in any other faith other than Islam, and nobody would come forward because of maybe the fear or anything. He said that if you really believe in the divine word, if you really believe in divine, and if you really believe in these virtues, and then the first thing is that you don't need to be afraid. It is a game of love. It is not a game of fear. And so if you love the divine, then there is no fear. There is no hate. There is nothing to worry about. And so he gave again this attire or visual management of these 5 Ks. The 1 K we have already discussed, which is the hair. That is K. The 2nd K is the comb to manage that hair. The 3rd is the bracelet, which several people wear, even the non-Sikhs wear, right? I mean, it's basically a steel bracelet worn on your right or left hand, gives you a lot of reminders. I mean, I can go into the detail because each item is a subject in itself. And then there is for chastity, you wear shorts, and that was one thing. And 5th one was a small weapon. I wouldn't say a weapon, a kirpan. It looks like a weapon. It's an article of faith. But the idea was the self-defense. It's like, I would say, just like the In the United States, symbol where there's an eagle, in one paw is the olive branch, and the other paw you have the arrows. That when the persecution happens, Gobind Singh wanted to instill that if you're courageous, you also have, while being humble, which is the first requirement, you can also defend the righteousness. So be strong enough to defend yourself and others who may be unnecessarily subjected to persecution. So at that time, that was a kripan, a symbol of, again, protection. Protect the downtrodden who can't protect themselves.
Beautiful words. We have another question. Please discuss the difference of practicing the Sikh faith in US, UK, Canada, the diaspora, and those in India and Pakistan.
I think I'm not qualified to answer that because I have not lived in some of those places, and so I can't speak for all that. But as I think the answer for that was already in my presentation, that the practicing the Sikh way of life is very, very, very personal and internal to you. It is your relationship with the divine word, the divine message, the Shabad, what it is communicating to your mind. And that depends upon the status of your mind. How inquisitive or exploring or learning, or where is your desire? Where is your love? Where do you want to go? It does start with some level of dissatisfaction, inside you, when you're not happy of what you have or where you are in life. It could. So.
Kind of a follow-up question on that is, what are your practices at home with your children? What kind of books do you share? Do you teach them certain prayers? Obviously, it must start from a very young age.
The first 13 pages of Granth Sahib is what I call is our daily prayer. A portion of those 13 pages, we do it in the morning. A portion of those 13 pages, we do it in the evening. A portion of those 13 pages, we do it at night before we go to bed. That's the kind of a, by tradition, an accepted practice. And within those divine word recorded on the first 13 pages is the message about exactly what I shared with you guys in the presentation. It is how do you connect with the divine message, and incorporate it into your mind and daily living. How do you improve? How do you become a value and virtue-driven person and have the strength to overcome the vices which you will face, are bound to face as a human being on a daily basis, no matter where you are, irrespective of the place in this world, irrespective of the age you are in, you will be encountering that. At that time, what is going to help you? What's going to help you is the more you have absorbed that message in your mind is going to be your shield and connection to the divine, And so to get to the final stage where you achieve, hey, Guru mere sang sada hai nale, what it means is that the divine word is always with me to guide me, to help me in times when I may need it the most.
Thank you, Sarab. We have reached, unfortunately, the end of the hour. It has been a privilege to listen to your presentation and to your deep, well thought and knowledgeable answers to our questions. I'm sure many wanted to ask more. Unfortunately, those that have been on Facebook were not able to ask. So I would like to encourage you to send your questions to the Interfaith Alliance of Oklahoma. And these questions will be then shared with Sarab. And hopefully he'll be able to answer. I mean, I know I have many more questions. I most likely will be calling you. So thank you, Sarab, for your presentation. Thank you to the Interfaith Alliance. Thank you to the board for such a wonderful program. Please visit our website, and we hope in the future we'll have more presentations of other faiths and beliefs, simply to develop friendships and to learn from each other. Thanks again, Sarab, and thank you all for attending, and have a wonderful night.
Thank you.